We're not saying we don't have to do the other things. So, for example, the box of remembering Allah, we don't have to make dhikr, or we don't have to say the prayers or du'as before we eat, or before we get in a car, or before we go to sleep or wake up. Of course, we have to do that. But the point being is, if we don't do that, is it sinful? Now, we can do as much of this as we like, and inshallah, we will be rewarded for our intention. But the things which are legislating are the boxes in green. A quick slide about scholarly reasoning. Going back to the transmitted sources, لا اجتهاد مع النص, which is a principle which the scholars use, that if there is established, authentic, clear, in meaning, textual evidence, then we're not allowed to reason about it or to perform ijtihad. That's the general rule. Whereas if there isn't a clear text for something, then that is what the scope of ijtihad is. So this is how different opinions come about, or ikhtilaf as we understand it, or as we term it. There can be differences in interpretation. The Arabic language itself can be interpreted differently. How the different sources are applied. When I say the sources are applied, I mean the sources are the rational sources, the aqli sources. For example, some scholars accept some or don't accept others. Some scholars accept urf. Some scholars accept maslaha. For example, the actions of the people of Medina is something that the Maliki school accepts, but others don't. So by having these different uses of these sources is how we end up with difference of opinion. Now, difference of opinion itself is both a blessing and a test. And it's something which the Prophet used to teach us and encourage us to deal with. There's a famous example of the Sahaba who were going to the tribe of Bani Qurayza, and the time of Asr came. Some of them wanted to pray, and the Prophet Muhammad quite clearly, don't pray Asr until you get to Bani Qurayza. Now, some of the Sahaba on the way, when the time of Asr came, said, no, we have to pray now because it's the time of Asr. What he meant was, hurry up and get there before it's Asr. But the other group of Sahaba said, no, he specifically said, don't pray Asr until you get to Bani Qurayza. So we're not going to pray until we get there. So half of them prayed on the way, and half of them prayed when they arrived at their destination. Because of this disagreement, they went back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and asked him who was right. And he stayed silent and indicated that they were both right. So interestingly, the Sahaba themselves, on the journey, they didn't start fighting, or they didn't excommunicate some others and say, you're no longer Muslims or anything like that. They both did what they thought was right and carried on, and then took it back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as the verse in Surah Nisa says, if you're in any variance about anything, refer it back to Allah and His Messenger. And he was okay with both, meaning that there is difference of opinion allowed. Again, in matters where it's permitted. Moving on, almost reaching the end now, the different types of ruling. I think we're going to have to rush through some of this because we are quite short on time. I want to leave some points or some time for some discussion. We're all familiar with the different types of ruling, of wajib, of mandub, of haram, and makruh, and mubah. Now this is looking at going back to the diagram, the middle circle of what is the injunction that is coming from the source. So what is the thing that we are being asked to do or not do by our Creator? How are we? This is actually the act of worship, if you will, is the type of ruling. So any act can either be obligatory, it can be encouraged, it can be forbidden, it can be detested, or it can be permissible. So every action breaks down into one of these categories. So if we quickly look at the definitions, the definition of wajib or obligatory is that which is being requested by Allah by way of obligation. If you do it, you're rewarded, and if you leave it, you're punished. So again, the focus of the scholars is reward and punishment. What is the ensuing effect, if you will, in the hereafter for whoever does this or doesn't do it? Mandub is a grade under wajib, in that the one who does it is rewarded, but the one who leaves it is not punished. So this is all the things which are encouraged, which even the Prophet Muhammad did but didn't obligate or didn't do without fail, if you will. Many things come under this category. So the one who does it is rewarded, and the one who leaves it is not punished. Haram we have, which is the actual opposite of obligatory, where the one who does it is punished and the one who leaves it is rewarded. But this is very interesting, and I want to take a moment to just reflect on this, that the one who does it obviously is punished. So if we take a simple example of drinking alcohol, or taking drugs, or committing zina, all of these things, the one who does it is punished, as we would naturally understand, but the one who leaves it is rewarded, which is very interesting. So just for not doing a haram action, there is reward. Now the scholars say this is through the mercy of Allah and through His bounty, that all the time, for example, we're living in this country and alcohol is available, readily available. You can go to any pub on the corner, you can go to any supermarket, any off license and get alcohol. But the fact that you don't do that, because you know that Allah has made this haram, you're getting rewarded for it. So we are accumulating, inshallah, all of this reward just for leaving these forbidden actions. Alhamdulillah. Now the opposite of mandub is detested, or makruh, where the one who leaves it is rewarded, but the one who does it is not punished. And finally, in between all of these, we have mubah, which is permissible, where Allah has left it to us. We have a choice. So either we do it or we don't do it. It's completely up to us. And there's neither reward nor punishment necessarily associated with it. So it's very interesting. The mubah category is a subject in itself, as to how sometimes it can be rewardable and sometimes it can be punishable, depending on its intention, depending on where it leads to. So something might be something quite innocent and harmless, but if it leads to something harmful, it might be deemed haram or makruh. But if it leads to something obligatory or something wholesome or something good, then that itself might be rewardable or obligatory. There's many examples we can think of, inshallah, for that. And in the comments section, if you guys have any points you'd like to, or have any examples that you can think of for mubah, let's see them, inshallah. So we've actually reached the end now. If you have any, for some reason the chatting system is not working. I've just had a message from the moderator, and if you have any questions or comments, I mean, I'm gonna there's another discussion point after this. If you have any comments or questions or things that weren't clear, and unfortunately, if I had to rush some things, I'm afraid. If you'd like clarification on anything, please email isbmanchester@gmail.com. That's isbmanchester@gmail.com, all one word, and please send your questions or comments to that email address, because some technical reasons the chat system is not working. So the two discussion points I had in mind here are, what is the wisdom in having a mubah category? So if we look again at the scale, if you will, of legal ruling, on the one hand, obligatory, on the polar opposite, and then inside of those, to a lesser extent, on the side of the obligation, we have encouraged or mandub, and on the side of haram, we have makruh or detested, and in between those, we have mubah. So if we think about it, how many things are obligatory in life? Really, if we count them, there's not really that many. And if we look at the things which are haram, if we actually count how many things there are, there's not really that many things which Allah has explicitly told us to do and explicitly told us not to do. There aren't really that many things. Most of life falls into the mubah category. So the question is, what is the wisdom in having this mubah category? Is there any wisdom in it, or is it just stuff that Revelation or Allah or the Prophet Muhammad never got around to covering? Is it a big hole in our religion, or is there some wisdom in it? So that's the question I'd like you guys to think about. And finally, yes, completely forgot this is on there. I think we've got a few minutes we'll spend on this, and it ties into the last discussion point. So if we look at that diagram again, which is very small at the bottom of the slide, we've looked at the source, or the sources of the rulings, We've looked at the ruling itself, and then now the final point is to the circle on the right, the legal subject. So who is the one that these rulings apply on? So if we go back to our understanding of worship, of serving our Creator has told us or requested of us certain things to do and to leave. Those things can be one of a number of categories. They can either be obligations or recommendations, or things to leave, or things which we're discouraged from. And now we're looking at upon whom does this apply to. So what are or the question is, are there any criteria for application of these rulings? Do they apply to everyone? Or are there some exceptions? So this is another question to think about. Are there some cases, so if we take an example, because perhaps we're being a little bit abstract at the moment, if we say that, for example, prayer, the obligation of praying, does that apply to everybody at all times, or are there exceptions? Another example we could say is drinking alcohol. The prohibition on alcohol, does that apply for all times, or are there exceptions? So that's really the question that I'm asking, is upon whom do these rulings apply, and when do they apply? So that's the question. The second discussion point, is everybody subject to the law, or are there exceptions? That's the end of the presentation. Apologies if I've rushed anything, or if anything wasn't clear, or if you weren't able to understand anything. Please email again isbmanchester@gmail.com if you've got any questions, generally about the content, or if you have any responses to the 2 discussion points. I'll bring the slides up again just so you can make a note of them. One being, what is the wisdom in having a mobile category? And secondly, is everyone subject to the law, or are there exceptions? So on these 2 points, if you have any input, please do share it. We'd love to have your suggestions, and also if you have any questions, please let us know. So we've reached the end of the discussion. It would have been good to have some comments, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be working. So we'll leave it there, and inshallah until the next time, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.